So we are all obviously here today to create positive change. And with that positive energy and positive change, you can go out there and make a difference every day of your life. And it starts now, it starts here, and it's been since probably he got into office. And it will go on until we create the democracy, because we still have a democracy. He's working on it, but we still have one. We still have a democracy, and that is what it is all about. So,
President.
Thank you.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
We have something called freedom of the press and
Yes,
freedom
I
of
love
speech,
free
which is
press.
great. Yes, it's a good thing. Something called the First Amendment. It's a good thing. American citizens don't want to limit our ideas or have the expression of them limited, but there must be watchdogs in place. We have the Federal Communications Commission and journalists, but you and I, as citizens, need to be the watchdogs.
Yes.
Right? It's when things are falsely reported and we allow it that our freedom of speech suffers. The freedom of the press is generally understood to prevent the government from interfering with the distribution of information and opinions. How's that working for us? I teach television production to broadcast journalism students at the University of Central Florida. And in doing so, I speak to them about these issues very specifically. I tell my students, first and foremost, truth in journalism starts with personal integrity. Reporting false news or inaccurate facts undermines the publication or station you represent, and more importantly, yourself. We must demand the truth from ourselves before we demand it of others. Right? Then we must hold others accountable. One thing I've always known to be true is that there is no shame in doing the right thing. A story is not more important than facts, and journalistic pride not more important than principle. Ever hear the phrase, rules are made to be broken? Certainly seems the case in American journalism, doesn't it? However, good journalists know that their work has ethical principles. In fact, most are members of the SPJ, or Society of Professional Journalists, which believe that, quote, public enlightenment is the forerunner of justice and the foundation of democracy. There's that word again, Melanie. Ethical journalism strives to ensure the free exchange of information that is accurate, fair, and thorough, and that an ethical journalist acts with integrity. The Society declares these four principles as the foundation of ethical journalism and encourages their use in its practice by all people in all media. They must be, number one, they must be vigilant and courageous about holding those with power accountable. Yes. They are the ones who give the voice to the voiceless. Number two, they avoid stereotyping and should examine the ways their values and experiences may shape their reporting. I mean, we all have certain biases, but how we were raised or how the environment affected us, still journalists cannot afford this luxury. They must be objective. Number three, journalists should balance the public's need for information against potential harm or discomfort. Pursuit of the news is not a license for arrogance or undue intrusiveness. And number four, they must recognize that legal access to information differs from an ethical justification to publish or broadcast it. Unfortunately, 24-hour news networks tend to place much more emphasis on getting the scoop sometimes than being accurate. So in closing, I'd just like to encourage not just journalists and those of my students, but all of us to be more skeptical. Have the courage to ask the difficult questions like everybody's doing on Tuesdays in Rubio's, in front of Rubio's office. Demand the truth from ourselves and others, and especially those in power. Some are getting away with bending the laws that we do have in place. Perhaps we need to make new laws and better laws, right? But until then, we must self-regulate and hold those accountable who are manipulating our current laws. Integrity, decency, and truth. Those are the virtues that can make America great again. Thank you.
We want transparency, down with dishonesty. We want transparency, down with dishonesty. We want transparency, down with dishonesty.
First, as a veteran, I remember being deployed often under an administration that I didn't particularly agree with, but there was not a time that I actually believed there was some other entity that was pulling the strings. I can't imagine what that feels like today to be an active duty service member and not really knowing the level of conflicts of interest going on in this administration, and also the potential that Russia's actually involved. That must really be hard for them. So just for the active duty service members, we deserve this information, and they deserve to be able to know if they're having to go to war, and that they are forward deployed already, when they go to war, when they have to go in harm's way, that is something that's actually in America's interest and not somebody else's. Secondly, as a lawyer, I've always cared strongly about justice and equal treatment under the law. Truth is pretty fundamental to those ideals. I don't feel like right now we're getting a lot of that with the increase in hate crimes that's happened over the last 18 months. I believe resulting from the language that the current president has used during the campaign. Also, children who are not going to school because they're Muslim, they wear hijab, they're afraid for their physical safety to ride a school bus, to go to school, they're being harassed. Additionally, American citizen students that are not going to school because they are afraid that somebody in their family who is undocumented is going to be rounded up by dropping them off at school or following them home from school.
Shame! 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 Shame!
I believe that most of these issues result from the misinformation campaign that has been run by the current administration throughout the presidential campaign and continues still. It's discriminatory, it's hateful, and it is causing real harm. And lastly, as a mother, I teach my children to tell the truth, to be fair, and to help people whenever they can. The president and his affiliates are working in direct opposition to my efforts to teach my children the principles that I care about. And I feel like it is necessary that we as community members make it clear that when somebody lies, there are repercussions. So I'd like to thank you all for being here. It really does make a difference that you show up, that people who are dealing with the issues that I'm dealing with, the children, that they know that that is not the way that democracy is supposed to work, that you get in trouble when you lie, and people will show up and call you out for it, just like the previous speaker was saying. We're the ones that have to hold people accountable, just like with any child.
We now have issues with the White House administration, and we must stand up to them, and we must persist until we prevail. Now, given my many years of experience of encouraging young journalists to pursue the truth, I'll be damned if I'm going to sit idly by and watch an administration that literally attacks journalists and denigrates journalism and the Constitution and democracy. That the First Amendment that they are attacking is the First Amendment that gives us the right to gather peacefully here. It is the First Amendment that gives us the right to ask our government for redress of grievances. And that's why we're here. We are here to ask, no, to demand that the government look into possible wrongdoing. Because, as Richard Nixon once said, the public has a right to know whether their president is a crook or not. And again, that's why we're here. We want transparency, we want facts, we want tax returns, we want truth.
White free pass, and I can stop and say whatever I want, pretty much stand up to whoever I want, and I don't have to worry because I'm free to do pretty much whatever I want because I have that white free pass. For people that aren't like that, they have to not only make the time, but they also have to put on their hat of courage and take risks to speak up like we are speaking up. So I wanted to tell you about that. It doesn't take courage for us as much, but it does take us making time. And I didn't get involved in politics until my late 40s, and it was much too flippin' late. I'm responsible for some of this because I wasn't there screaming and yelling and talking then. But I'm never going to be silent. We will never be silent. It takes courage to do what Barack Obama did, to fight the negativity and the hate. It took courage for Grover Cleveland, for George Washington, and a lot of others. We can make the time to get out there and protest. Thank you.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
All right.
I don't think I joke without being slogan.
I like that one.
This is what democracy.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy, go ahead.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like. Democracy looks like.